And good evening, everyone. Jon Russel. Mike Meekhof of M7 Sports here for another week. Detroit treated you pretty badly. I see.
Yeah, last week I asked my wife Pam. I said, watch the show. What'd you think of the show? How did we sound? How did we look? She goes, you looked good. You sounded good, but you didn't have any eyebrows.
Oh, you took care of that.
So I got eyebrows now, honey. So how do I look? Actually, this kind of doubles as kind of my clown look, because if anyone saw my predictions last week, I looked like a total clown. 10-8, I think I was, and it was like, I bombed on so many games. Like all the big ones I missed, and it wasn't even close. So I'm taking my medicine now, everybody. And yes, I'll take these crazy glasses off, but yeah, and I figured I'd throw you guys for a loop with that too.
Welcome to our second week of West Michigan First and 10. We are Cal-less today. Cal is a little bit under the weather, so it's just three of us here today. So I'll tell you what, why don't we get started in the OK Green? And boy, I'll tell you what, those Eastsiders did not treat our Muskegon schools very well at all this past week. Let's start out with the Cass Tech taking on Muskegon, 49-14 at historic Hackley Field. I know you were there for that one. And again, one of the things where we say not necessarily surprised that Cass Tech defeated Muskegon, but man, as I was listening to that game when I was driving around, I thought, holy smokes, I did not expect that. Your thoughts?
Yeah, just to simplify it as much as I can, Cass Tech was just big, strong, fast, well-schooled. They were just, and I don't know if they can play better than that. I wouldn't want to be the team on the other side of it, because they played awfully well. And they got a great junior quarterback, little lefty, LeSean Mumfield, and he was just right on the money all night long. I think it kind of summed it up for Muskegon. Cass Tech was up 35-7, a few seconds left in the first half, and they had the ball on like the 20, maybe the 16 is what it was. They're going to set up for a field goal. Then they got a false start, and then another one, and they're like, forget it, we're going to go for it. Yeah. So they threw it up, the quarterback scrambled, he threw it up, and the kid caught it, got his feet in, somehow caught the ball, and that just kind of summed it up for Muskegon right there. All that they were just outstanding. And Muskegon, I'm not sure how much of it was them. Obviously, if some of it was them, but right. Cass Tech played so well. They got a new coach, and Marvin Rushing, and he was in complete control. They just looked really good.
Your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, so most of us in the Muskegon area media picked Muskegon to beat Cass Tech or make it. I don't know if there was a little bias involved in that, but man, that was, from looking at it, it was never competitive. Cass Tech led 35-0 at one point, and they had a running clock the entire second half. One of the bright spots, I think, for Muskegon that's came in relief the last couple of games was running back Jake Price. He had 6 carries for 73 yards and a touchdown for him. So I think he's one of their young stars to really look at going forward.
Well, and they had the running back was huge. He was like a guard at running back. I was watching some of the replays of that, and
their left tackle.
And yeah,
well, the running back.
His arm looked like a giant.
Yeah.
I made the comment on the sideline. I don't know if you remember Bully from River Rouge a couple years ago that ran against Muskegon. He reminded me a lot of him. I'm like, I thought that kid graduated from River Rouge 2 years ago.
Exactly. And then the Division I prospects that they had, I think their offensive line, which was huge, have a whole bunch of Division I commits or folks that are close to committing to Division I too. So they obviously Division, they are the real deal, to say the least. So, we're hopefully the Big Reds will be able to get back on track. It's not going to be easy. They're going to be playing John Shillitoe and the vaunted Wing T against Zeeland West. And what are you thinking of this one, Scott?
That's another tough one. They don't have time to feel sorry for themselves. They got to get right back to work. And traditionally, Shane Fairfield teams have done a good job against the Wing T. Last year, Zeeland West came to Hackley and controlled almost the whole game, and then Muskegon scored late, and then they had a 95-yard school record punt return by Miles Walton to win it. Basically, the extra point won it, but they kind of pulled that one out, and then Zeeland West got knocked out of the playoffs because of COVID, so they could have maybe met in the playoffs again. But yeah, it's going to be another tough one.
Your thoughts, Mike?
Yeah, so like Scott said, Shane Fairfield has done excellent against Wing T teams. In fact, I've heard multiple times that he's undefeated against Wing T teams, but John Shillitoe is, in my opinion, the best in this state when it comes to this. If you watch any film or go to any Zeeland West game, you'll notice they only run about 10 plays. That's it. Just because they run it so well and they practice those few plays really hard and are masters at it. And personally, I think this is going to be a really close game, but I'm going to give Zeeland West the slightest of edges this week. And I think they finally knock off Muskegon.
And when we talk John Shillitoe, we kind of the godfather of the wing T, because when you talk about other teams that run the wing T, usually there's a coach that's been involved in the coaching staff of his or something like that. So much like Tony Anise, a lot of disciples or a lot of the coaching tree or whatever it is with Shillitoe, you definitely get that, don't you?
Oh, most certainly. Just a little link. I think there might even be a link between Edwardsburg and Zeeland West. When you watch Edwardsburg, at least for me, they remind me a lot of Zeeland West, and a lot of the same principles, kids who get in the weight room, just strong kids, and they run that wing T really well.
Yeah, when we did the Edwardsburg Montague game, their announcers had told us that Kevin Bartz was again a Shillitoe disciple. So I guess if you're going to follow somebody, you're not exactly going to follow somebody that doesn't have a lot of success. So
or even if you want to keep it around here, even Orchard View's coach Fred Rademacher is a John Shillitoe disciple.
Exactly, and then coming back home for that. Your thoughts on Zeeland West Muskegon? You think they're going to bounce back?
Yeah, that'll be a tough one. I mean, I think they got the good track record, but Muskegon's just a little bit different this year in that they're really young.
Yeah.
They're breaking in a lot of young players. They're breaking in a new quarterback. Miles started the first game last year, but he's the starting quarterback now, and they've got a new offensive coordinator, so they're kind of adjusting on the fly. So it's tough, but Shillitoe, I think they lost some guys on their squad too, but with them it's just a case of just plugging new parts into that machine that they've got. So it's hard to bet against Muskegon in most cases, but it's going to be a tough one for them, I think.
How about you, Mike?
Another thing is that, you could look at this as either a positive or negative. Take it how you want, but Zeeland West didn't play last week. They had an open week, and they beat EGR pretty badly week 1. But, with those 2 weeks, you could either say, well, they lost a game, or you can say, well, they had an extra week to prepare. But I'm still going to go with Zeeland West. I think they have what it takes to barely pull it out.
And I'm going to take Muskegon because I just think that they're going to rebound, and it's going to be tough. But I think they'll. Zeeland West is not Cass Tech, so I think it's going to be a bit of a.
Yeah, this is true.
So.
Yep, this is very true.
Let's go to the other trip that was made to Detroit, Mona Shores. And we'll start with you on this one, Mike. Your alma mater, Mona Shores, taking on Detroit King, and boy, Detroit King had about as much success with the Mona Shores as Cass Tech did with Muskegon. 40-19 was the final in that one.
Yeah, so even though the game was tied at 13 midway through the second quarter, I think you could tell just from watching the game that it wasn't close on either. I can truthfully say I don't think there was a position that Shores was better than King at. There were some matchups that went really well for Shores. Like, I thought the only two things that Shores did well were the deep ball occasionally and outside runs. Both sides of the line couldn't go against the King front. King's receivers ran all over Shores DBs. King had a pretty easy time running to the inside, running to the outside, where Shores never even got an inside running game going at all. Anytime they tried to run the quarterback or, hand it off up the middle, it never worked. And really, all of Shores' scoring drives were off of penalties and kind of slowly moving the ball and struggling, even though they did score. And the only long drive was that one in the second quarter that pass from Mark Konechny to Jalen Vinton. It might have been the first quarter. It's tied at 13. Other than that, I don't really think they put together a quick drive that looked, fluid in scoring.
Scott?
Yeah, just obviously getting the updates, the tweets from Mike and retweeting and just kind of following it on my phone that way, and then talking to Matt Koziak that night. It was, of course, they were just up against a really tough order, and then on top of that, King, I'm sure, had a lot of payback in mind because Shores took them down in the finals a couple years ago, and then they really put one on them last year, even though the score didn't look like it. That was a mercy rule type game. And, they were just, sounds like they were just enormous on the line. They were talented at basically every position. And that was, I think one of the things that stood out to me the most, and I know it really doesn't have anything to do with the game, was what Mike was able to capture after the game when he got a video of Koziak playing catch with some young King fans, young King kids. It was really cool. I mean, to me that shows that you have your head kind of in the right place that see, they just took a 40-19 beating,
Right.
snapped a 19-game
19
winning streak.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's taken some of the time out of his own day. I mean, he was, you tell me, Mike, you were there, but I think you told me that all the players were on the bus, whatever. And,
Yeah, absolutely.
And Matt stays out there playing catch with these kids and chatting them up and stuff. That was really cool, I thought.
Yeah, and I try to do those type of stories whenever I kind of see the opportunity. You know, I had just got done interviewing him, and I was actually heading back to my car, and I saw Koziak go out and just start throwing the ball with these kids, and I just thought, they just lost, and he's out there, you know, still with selflessly playing the ball, playing catch with them. I mean, I love those type of stories, and even last year, during basketball, I did a nice story on David Ingles, Kent City's basketball coach. After they got blown out by Orchard View, he went in Orchard View's locker room and gave them a speech about how good he thought they could be and some of the mottos he taught his team. So really, I love any time I get an opportunity to do those stories, and that one was really a special one.
Well, this week, Mona Shores is going to take on Union, and this is not the Union team of the past. We had an opportunity to watch them play last year when Don Fellows came over. Of course, Don Fellows, that name might sound familiar, had the great career over at Grand Rapids Christian and multiple playoff teams. And then, of course, before that, he was coaching with Anise at Muskegon. So he comes from that Tony, we talk about coaching trees, that Tony Anise coaching tree. And I'll tell you what, he's got this Grand Rapids Union team believing in themselves. And so it's not going to be a case of Mona Shores just being able to throw their cleats on the field and cash in a win, is it?
No, it's not. And, well, I do think Shores will win fairly easily in this game. I have been saying all week that I feel like I'm living in an alternate universe because you got Union, Hart, and Muskegon Heights all at 2-0. And you have Muskegon, Mona Shores, and Montague all at 1-1. So it kind of feels like an alternate universe, but I do love seeing those type of teams succeed, especially after so many down years. I think Union went 5 years without winning the game, and I'm so happy for Don Fellows and that program for what they've been able to succeed over there, and I look forward to seeing them continue to build, but I'm going to go with Shores and a pretty lopsided one this week.
Your thoughts, Scott?
Yeah, I like Shores in this one. Don Fellows, Shores is another stop of his.
Yep.
He was there too. So, it's a great story to see them kind of rising a little bit, and it sounds like their numbers are really good. But I just think this is one of those ones that, winning the conference title is important to Mona Shores. That's one of their big goals.
Right.
That's the first goal every year because that's the first thing that comes.
Sure.
They're the defending champs. They want to win the conference again, so you got to start with that, and they want to get back on track and everything. And so, yeah, I like Shores in that one, though. I mean, I think Union, I'll be curious to see what they look like on Friday because that's the game I think I'm going to go to. And that'll be technically my last night with them live, although that will kind of leak into Saturday afternoon probably by the time I'm done with everything. But it's I'm looking forward to seeing that one. I think that's where I'm going to end up being. But, yeah, I think it'll be interesting.
Yeah, and I'll stay with the trifecta. I think it's going to be Shores, but I think, obviously this is not the Union team of the past. I think they'll make things somewhat interesting, but I think that Shores will be able to handle them, especially coming off a loss last week against a very tough Detroit King team. Let's talk about the Reese Puffer Rockets. They rebounded nicely after, they come back. They wound up winning against St. John's by the score of 19-6 in that one. We thought going in that they might have a shot against the St. John's team.
Yeah, it kind of played out, I think, how some of us thought. It was tight most of the way through. I think it was 6-6 entering the fourth quarter maybe, and somewhere around that range. And they ended up putting it away late. But, yeah, they had a big game from Brody Johnson, a sophomore, who had 202 rushing yards and 22 carries. And they just, they got the job done and without jumping ahead and stepping on your toes. There's another, winnable game coming up, and I'll let you guys talk about that, and I know Mike's got thoughts on that game too, probably on this current game.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so we said last week that St. John's is, that this is a must-win for Reese Puffer, and St. John's is no slouch of a program. I mean, they've made the playoffs. Besides, last year everybody got in, but they've had a winning record out of 10 out of the so many other, and for Puffer to be able to get that win is huge, and I feel like it keeps their season alive and maybe gives them a little more confidence going into some of these tougher conference games. And like Scott said, Brody Johnson had a heck of a game with over 200 yards.
And yeah, I think that they'll take care of Wyoming and keep on going. And obviously, every win that Reese Puffer can get is golden right now when you have Mona Shores and Muskegon in your conference. So it builds their character and builds their confidence too. Let's talk about the OK Blue and the Fruitport Trojans. Had a tough one. We knew this one was going to be tough going in. Cadillac, a very solid team. Fruitport gave them battle 28-12, and we'll start with you on this one, Mike.
So Nate Smith said after the game that he had told his team all week that this game was going to be a test for them. And really, even though they didn't win, I thought they showed a lot as far as how they were able to compete with Division IV runner-ups, and I think that's a really positive sign going forward for that program that's struggled for the last 10 years.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it was going to be the fact that they were competitive throughout. It was 14-0 at halftime, so they were in it, and they just could never really get over the hump and maybe take that momentum. It seemed like, but yeah, that's a positive step, even though they didn't win. And again, kind of leading you into this week's game with Coopersville, that's another one that I think it's going to be a test, but let's see some more positive signs. Maybe they can even pull that one out this week.
What's your thoughts on that, Mike?
I think Fruitport pulls out the close win over Coopersville. I mean, Coopersville is going up as a program too, and I think that's going to be a really good game. And Fruitport was able to get them the last couple of years, and I think they'll pull away with a big win that's much needed before they play a really tough Spring Lake team week 4.
Yeah, Coopersville 2-0. They beat Big Rapids 42-30, and then Wayland 42-0. But yeah, I think Nate Smith's got the Trojans believing in themselves, and they got a great quarterback in the Reams kid, and so I think they got some weapons this year. Let's move on to the West Michigan Conference. I guess we'll start with you, Scott. A game that we were all at, all of us, me with the Greater Muskegon Sports Network and also CatchMark SportsNet, and you with them live and, of course, M7. It was Oak Ridge getting the better of Whitehall, 32-19.
Yeah, I thought they won that game up front. Mike, we were both there, as you said, and I just thought that's where it was won, and they actually did a good job of distributing the ball to their three backs. Everyone knew about Corey Vanderput, and then you look at Brendan Raymond. I knew he was one of their backs, but they had the sophomore out there too. I think he's a sophomore, right? Their third back out there, and he was impressive too. So they were actually kind of mixing it up really well and keeping Whitehall, on its heels, and they couldn't really settle in. Whitehall, to their credit, hung around, and it was a 7-point game, into the fourth quarter, but they just couldn't get over the hump, and Oak Ridge, I thought, was in control basically throughout.
I'll agree with everything Scott said, and I thought Oak Ridge played better than what the score was in the way that I felt like Whitehall came back on just some missed opportunities that Oak Ridge had, but really throughout the game, I thought they played like they were 3 touchdowns better than Whitehall. They were able to run the ball effectively, like Scott said, between Vanderput, Danacek, and Brendan Raymond. And Brendan Raymond's a player that we haven't talked about very much, and he had a heck of a game with 3 touchdowns and 72 yards, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what that trio does throughout the season, and they're probably my projected favorite to win the WMC as of right now.
Yeah, I went in thinking that it was going to be Corey Vanderput heavy running because, over 100 yards the week before. In fact, he winds up getting 100 yards again in this one. But, boy, Oak Ridge comes out. I think the first 3 plays, they hand it to Trevor Jones, and he runs it up the middle. Then they get Raymond involved in the game, and then they get Vanderput involved. And then Danacek throws. And that was the kind of the X factor for me. I certainly knew that Matt was a great athlete, but I didn't know, if throwing was going to be a factor. But this kid is heaving the ball, and man, I'll tell you what, that adds a whole new dimension to that team.
I have to say, though, I think there's a missed opportunity. There's the kid that might run the best on the team is the kid that's playing offensive tackle, Ethan Joseph. He picked off that pass with those mitts of his, and all in one swoop kind of went and pressured the quarterback, put his hands up, and the ball just stuck in his hands, and he was off to the races. And the week before, he basically recorded the safety that won it for him midway through the fourth quarter against Sparta, which proved to be a really good win because Sparta turned around and put one on Ludington pretty well this last week. So
he's kind of an offensive defenseman, I guess you would say.
Yeah. 6'5", 240, and he can do those things.
Yeah, that was amazing. He went up just to, I think, knock down the pass, and all of a sudden it's just like it stuck. And then he's racing like 49 yards for a touchdown.
I bet he's going to be asking if Coach, tight end, slide me over spot maybe.
Yeah. Is there some offensive time for me? Well, you've got Oak Ridge this week. They have a bye. Well, I guess technically they win by forfeit. I think you were saying against Mason County. Is that correct?
Yeah, like late in the summer, I think it was when Mason County Central decided because of numbers, low numbers in different situations, they were not going to play Oak Ridge, Montague, or Whitehall. They were going to kind of do like a hybrid varsity/JV schedule and just play some teams and not others. But then after that happened, COVID hit their school. They had some kids impacted by that, so they lost games that they were going to play, like Manistee, which I think they've gone on to reschedule. And then, they were supposed to play Hart last week, but that's when Hart picked up Kent City. We'll get to that as well. But that's, that was another game that they lost off their schedule. But as it stands now, Mason County is supposed to open its season early next week against Ravenna.
Okay. We'll talk about Whitehall in a second as far as who they play, because it kind of ties into our next game, and that's Ravenna taking it to Shelby. Shelby looks like it's going to be another tough year for the Tigers, but Ravenna rolled up 63-6, 2-0, and Justin Eagles got the Bulldogs howling over there with 2 wins in a row.
Yeah, and they've looked really impressive so far, especially like we talked about last week with that win over Beale City. The real test for them, especially as far as WMC play, is going to be this week against Whitehall. I think we'll really get to see where they're at as a program. And I just want to say Kyle Beebe for Ravenna. He was 2 of 3 for 84 yards and 2 touchdowns against Shelby. So just wanted to throw that out there.
Didn't throw much, but it was pretty profound when he did. Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, they got some nice athletes on that Ravenna team. That's what I've heard from many different people. They're really, really good in the skill positions. If you get them in space, that they can make some plays. So that's the whole key. Like Mike said, when you face like the Whitehalls, the Montagues, and Oak Ridges, then that's what you're going to be running into. And that's really what football comes down to is if you don't have the guys up front, you can't get the job done, you're really not going to be doing much. Right. So that's going to be the key for them, is how they can handle things up front.
And that leads us to this week's game. It's going to be the game that we're going to be doing on the Greater Muskegon Sports Network, along with CatchMark SportsNet through the NFHS. It's going to be Ravenna taking on Whitehall over at Whitehall. And I guess, how do you see that one coming out? Man,
I think a lot of depends on Whitehall's injury status. I mean, I just don't know. Seemed like maybe 1 or 2 kids might have gotten dinged up. I mean, you get into the season, you're going to have that.
Sure.
A lot of it depends on the health status, but Whitehall, you kind of got to like them to bounce back, being at home. And they're pretty strong up front as well. But man, I mean that's a really tough one, because there's been a lot of crazy games in this series, in the Whitehall Ravenna game, where you're not expecting it, and then ends up some wild shootout or something. Right. So I mean, Ravenna's got the ability to do that, but I think all things being equal, I'd probably have to give Whitehall the edge in this one.
I honestly think, just like the Muskegon-Zeeland West game, I'm going to go a little bit on the wild side and pick the upset. I'm going with Ravenna. I think they've really come around as a program under Justin Ego, and like you said, Whitehall has some injuries, and I'm going to go with them to start 3-0.
And that's not a bad pick at all.
No,
I mean,
it really isn't.
And the thing is, their schedule sets up. If they can get that one, then they got Mason County Central if that game's played. I mean, it should be, but then I think maybe Montague, and then another, not another break, but another winnable game possibly, and then Oak Ridge. So I think the games are spread out in a way that if they can get one here, then that kind of sets themselves up for some really good success, I think.
Yeah, and I think this is a rebound game. It's got to be for Whitehall after that tough loss to Oak Ridge. They're not going to want to fall down again. I think Ravenna's going to give them a battle. I would not be surprised if Ravenna. How's this for hedging? I wouldn't be surprised if Ravenna wins it. But I'm going to just to make a pick. I'm going to say that it's going to be Whitehall winning this one at home. I'll give them the home discount, I guess. And then you have Hart. Boy, like Mike said, the alternative world. They're 2-0. They defeat Kent City by the score of 30-22 last week.
Yeah, that was a game that they picked up late because they lost the Mason County Central game. That game was knocked out of there because of COVID, so they weren't going to be able to play that, and they were scrambling. Kent City already had an opening in the schedule, so Kent City agreed. They already had 6 home games, from what I heard, so they agreed to go up to Hart and play it. And then we're getting updates, and Hart was all over them early. I'm like, wait, is that score right? And I mean, credit to them. Joe Tanis, their first-year coach there. He was the coach at Orchard View, but first year at Hart. he said he really liked those guys, and they're physical, and they're playing tough, and they've got some athletes on the team, and so far it's showing that. I think this week's the big test, though.
Yeah, and like Scott said, they really surprised me and him. I mean, Kent City's won that league in the CSAA gold or silver for I don't know how many of the past few years, but a bunch of them. And really, Kellen Kimes, their quarterback, was 3 of 6 for, 95 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, he really had a great game. And but one thing that I don't think enough people talk about is the WMC is one of the best small school conferences in the state, where you can be an average team in the WMC and beat some of the top teams in some of those other small school conferences, and that's what Hart showed.
Yeah, and we say that every year. I mean, once you get into the postseason, a lot of times in the West Michigan Conference, your first couple of games in the playoffs are easier than the gauntlet that you ran through during the regular season. And again, kudos to Joe Tanis over there with Hart. They're certainly one of the feel-good stories. They're going to have their work cut out for them against Montague, who's hungry after a big win over North Muskegon, 35-0. North Muskegon for the second week in a row, guys. They played Catholic the week before, and you're hearing very close game, and they stayed with them for a half. But boy, the second half has just proved to be the downfall for Coach Witham and the Norsemen.
Yeah, first career win for Justin Dennett as head coach, and so that's always a big one to get.
Sure.
But yeah, I think to me, and we said this last week on the show, that Edwardsburg, not that you can just throw it out, but I wasn't looking too much at that one. Even though the score got kind of out of hand, you have to look more at how they fare against North Muskegon, and obviously they took care of business in a big way. Dylan Everett had a big game, 175 yards on 25 carries, a couple touchdowns, and he kind of put up the stats that I think we all expected him to.
Right.
And this throughout the season, but that's a big win for them. Their defense, of course, set the tone, keeping a North Muskegon team that can throw the ball around pretty well, keeping them off the board.
Yeah, like I said last week, you can't write off Montague after week 1. I mean, I think Edwardsburg's the best team that program's played in probably 5 years. I mean, that's at least in my opinion, besides Jackson Lumen Christie in the 2018 state finals. And, they came out and dominated, and it didn't really look like Montague got that much going passing, but Dylan Everett had a really good game for him with 25 carries for 175 yards and 2 touchdowns. And really, I think this week, even though Hart's going to be really motivated, and I think they'll come in with a lot of confidence, they could play with them for a little bit, but I think Montague's going to win fairly easily, because I just think, their line is one of the biggest in the conference still, even though they lost a bunch of guys, and I think that they have a really powerful running game.
Yeah, I don't think the slipper fits this week for Hart. They're going to run into Montague, who is getting things back on track after the Edwardsburg game, so I think Montague will probably roll in that one.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, it's it's one of those measuring stick games for Hart, just to see where they're at. I guess we said that last week against Kent City, and look what happened. But it's still, I think you're stepping up again in class, and that's no offense to Kent City. It's just Montague's just been that spot as a program.
Sure,
you're stepping up in class when you're playing them.
The Norsemen now, they're going to be playing Shelby. They've had 2 weeks in a row where they really matched, toe-to-toe with some tough competition that first week. As we said, it gets out of hand a little bit in the second half. Not going to be that situation, I don't think, this week with Shelby. What are you thinking?
Yeah, North Muskegon the last couple of weeks, they're 0-2, but they've played 2 of the best programs, I think, in our area with Muskegon Catholic and Montague. And really, I would agree with you that North Muskegon's going to roll.
I'd agree with that. This is one of those, quote, get-well games, at least on the scoreboard, where you have a couple rough games to start, but I just think it is. I mean, Shelby, they're trying to get it back on track, and not real long ago they were winning conference titles, which, that was 2 years. And the fact they took care of business, it wasn't, I was there for the first half covering that, getting some photos, and then I went over to the Muskegon Cass Tech game, and I just kind of followed up with the coaches, the Heights and the Calvin Christian coaches afterwards. But yeah, it was nice for them to get that win and just get some of those good feelings again. You know,
Right.
Van Parker's really puts his heart and soul into that, and he's just trying to get the community to support him. And they actually did have, the stands weren't packed by any means, but there were some fans in there from both sides, and then there's vehicles parked around the fence, stopping and watching, and people coming up and just, hands through the fence, peering through the fence, getting a peek. And it's just cool because,
really
when the kids feel that support, it makes a huge difference.
And there was, so what's the deal with Wyoming Lee? They have them this week. Is Wyoming Lee forfeit, or how is that all going to play out?
I'm not sure. Is that where that stands with that, Mike?
Yeah, Van Parker confirmed to me about an hour ago that it's a forfeit win for Heights, so they'll be 3-0, which is going to be their best season in probably 8 years.
Since the Willie Snead years, right?
No, they went 4-4 the year after Willie Snead, and I think they had a 3-6 season somewhere in there. But yeah, this is their best season in a while, and like I said before, I think this kind of confidence can really help them throughout the season when they get into some of those tougher games in their conference schedule.
Exactly. How about West Catholic and Muskegon Catholic? We thought that was going to be a tough one for Muskegon Catholic, and it proved to be that way. Scott, 28-6, it was West Catholic over the Crusaders.
Yeah, we figured that would be a tough one for them. Talking to Steve Zerwan earlier in the week, he thought that maybe if they got to if they could put up some points, that maybe the defense could hang in there long enough. And I think that was probably the case, actually. But Grand Rapids West Catholic has Tim Kloska, who's considered one of the best backs in the Grand Rapids area, according to my MLive colleague, Steve Kaminsky. He ran wild in their opening game. And then against Catholic, he ran for 139 on 24 carries with 2 touchdown runs. But he's goes about 200 pounds or so, but he's just, well put together. And sounds like West Catholic's on the rebound, so maybe closer to heading back to maybe where they used to be as a program.
Yeah, and I said the same thing last week, that I thought it was going to be tough for Muskegon Catholic, and not because they're bad at all. I think that they'll have a great regular season, and they can even possibly win some games in Division VII. But I just think West Catholic's one of the best schools in the OK Blue, and really one of the best schools in Grand Rapids, and they're getting there, like Scott said, where they were under Dan Roan.
And what the deal this week? They were supposed to play Orchard View, but obviously with Orchard View not having a football team, are you guys hearing? Is there a game scheduled with somebody, or is it just an open date for them?
There wasn't anything last I heard talking to the ADs. From what I heard, they were still open. Okay. So I haven't heard anything. I don't know if you've heard anything on it yet.
I haven't heard anything.
Okay, so we'll consider that. And then I wanted to back up a little bit and do another OK school in Spring Lake. They took it to Zeeland East by the score of 56 to 21.
Yeah, and really, it was just a dominating win for them from the get-go. I think it was 28-0 after the first quarter and 42-0 at half. It was a running clock for most of that game. And Christian Folkert for Spring Lake, 11 attempts, 211 yards, 4 touchdowns. I mean, that's a dominant game on the ground, and I think they can be at the top of that OK Blue that we just talked about.
Yeah, Tom Kendra, who does obviously radio in the area here, and he was actually at that game, not broadcasting it, but I think he was there in another capacity, and he thought that Spring Lake's got a good 8 or 9 kids who are just good athletes, can do a lot of different things. And when you've got that, and then you've got those troop twins up front, those guys are just tanks up there, and those guys anchor the line, and they were looking for big things this year. And when I was getting score updates on that, I wasn't expecting those big things, but man, that was really impressive. That really caught my eye, and I do the MLive top 50 rankings, and actually the ones that published today are going to be my last ones because I'm done this week with them. But yeah, I moved them up into the rankings into the top 40 or something like that, just because I was that impressed with that win.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I saw you put a little spoiler in your Facebook title.
Yeah.
And my apologies, the CSAA, I got some great work at home, just like high school, and my best work was left at home a lot. And so I'm going to
this week. Who do they have this week again, Mike? Who are they taking on?
Kent City, Lakeview.
They got Lakeview, which Lakeview's been down. You know, that's a game that Kent City should be another one where they get well game. And then, you know, Hesperia, another one from the Silver. You know, they took another tough loss, and you know, they've got White Cloud this week. Which
it's another alternate reality one, 2-0 White Cloud.
White Cloud's 2-0, which they picked up a forfeit win, which was Lee, correct?
Yeah, and beat Shelby week 1.
Yeah, beat Shelby week 1. So then, but the biggest, the thing that caught my eye the most out of all the CSA was Holton, what they did last week and how they bounced back, because they took one on the chin against Hart, but as we're seeing, maybe that wasn't such a bad thing. And Holton turns around and beats Coleman, gets a nice comeback, and gets a nice bounce back win. And Mike, I'll let you take it from here because I don't want to hog all the CSAA from you. But
so I've always said that weeks 1 and week 2 are always the hardest to pick, because week 1 you don't know very much about the teams besides what you've seen in practices and at scrimmages. And week 2 sometimes you get the wrong idea. And I think that's what we got with Holton, because we saw the Hart-Holton score and we're like, wow, I mean, great for Hart, but Holton must be really down this year. But then we see Hart beat the best team in that conference, and then Holton gets a pretty convincing win over Coleman that won 61-0 in their opener. So, you know, that really mixes things up a bit and really doesn't tell you what to expect from those two teams. And even Hesperia, I think, even though they're 0-2, White Cloud's 2-0, I still think they get that win over White Cloud. And Dave Smith gets his first win as coach of the Eagles, or coach of the Panthers. And Kent City, I think they'll go with a dominating win over Lakeview. I think they're going to come out pretty upset over really the last two games. Even though they beat Newaygo, they had a bunch of turnovers, and that was really close, and they had to come back, and they just lost to Hart. So I think they're going to come out firing on all cylinders and be able to pick up that win.
And then the other division, you got the Gold Division, the bigger schools. Fremont lost to Big Rapids 40-13, but it was a 14-6 game at the half. So they hung around for a while and then just couldn't hang in there long enough. But you had a big game from Justin Durheimer, excuse me. He had 137 yards and 2 touchdowns and 24 carries. So that's a really good game for him. And so he put up a good performance, and that was a tough one for them. This week, they're hitting the road, I believe. They are headed to, let me check my magic schedule here. They are heading to Central Montcalm, which is 2-0. So that'll be another test for them. And then if you skip over Grant and Newaygo, both with first-year head coaches, at least in the high school level. Right. You've got Newaygo, they're coming off a loss to Central Montcalm. And then you've got Grant coming off a loss to Reed City. Grant lost 28-0 to Reed City, and Newaygo lost 29-13 to Central Montcalm. But you've got 2 new coaches there, and they're both ADs at those respective schools too. So they got a lot on their plate trying to get those programs back on track, but also kind of coordinating sports for their schools in a crazy time right now.
Yeah.
I'll agree with everything Scott said about the Gold, except I will say this about Fremont, which is exactly what I just said about the Silver as far as, weeks 1 and week 2. I mean, week 1, I thought Fremont looked impressive, competing with Ludington, and I'm like, ooh, Fremont might be pretty good this year. Ludington's always a good program, and that was a pretty close one. And then you see Ludington get blown out this week by Sparta, I think 41-3, and then you see Fremont get blown out. So, it's really hard to draw conclusions after week 1. You really have to get a couple weeks under your belt to be able to see what's going on.
Yeah, and I think the other team that we, jumping around here a little bit, Grand Haven, they lost to Traverse City. Was it Traverse City West?
It was West, yeah.
And rather handily, I guess, too. So kind of a little slap for them, I guess, after the win to start the season.
Yeah, that was Traverse City West. They had a nice comeback win over Midland in the battle at the Big House in week 1. And then Greg Vaughn, their coach, who used to be at St. Francis, people might remember him when they had games against Catholic and those types of, maybe, I don't know if he was coaching when Ravenna played him too, but he's had some success at different stops. He won the Detroit Lions High School Coach of the Week award in week 1. So, he's trying to get them turned around. It's going to, a great rivalry actually between them and Traverse City Central, where Jack Sugars is, helping his son Eric, the head coach there now. And now when those 2 teams meet, it's always a good one. So those are teams to look out for. But in Grand Haven, they hop into the OK Red now. They got Jenison at home this week, which there are no easy games in the OK Red. But I think it's going to be a tough one. I think you got to give Jenison the edge. But Grand Haven, you know, if they want to make these strides, this is the kind of game where you can see this as an opportunity for them.
I would give Jenison the edge as well, and I will say this: out of the OK conferences, especially if you compare the ones kind of in our area, the green and the red, I will say the green at the top probably has the best programs in the OK conference. But if you look at overall, the OK red is definitely the most competitive, because you can be an average or bad team in the OK green and you can still win 4 or 5 games. But if you're bad in the OK red, you probably won't win a game, if I'm being honest, especially in the conference schedule. And so I think this is going to be a tough one for Grand Haven, and I really think they're coming along as a program, especially after that win over Puffer. But that Traverse City game was not a good sign, and I think they're going to have their hands full with Jenison this week.
Well, as we get set to wrap up here, I guess we'll just go to kind of the parting shots for you guys. We'll start with you, Mike, with M7. Where are you going to be this week, and your thoughts as we sign off?
I'll be at Muskegon Zeeland West, and I think that's really going to be a good game. I was torn between going to that or Ravenna Whitehall, but I decided to go to Muskegon Zeeland West. And like I said earlier, I think Zeeland West wins in a close one, but really could go either way.
And this is the last assignment for you with M Live.
The last dance.
The last dance, and let you kind of reflect on that a little bit.
This might be my last show on CatchMark if I wear those glasses again. If I start acting like a clown again, you know, it might be last everything for me. I don't know, but it's you know, I could go with a parting shot with that. I am going to have a farewell column for M Live.
Okay. That'll
come out. Those are always tough to write, just because you just don't want to leave anyone out. There's so many people that, you know, you've encountered and developed great friendships and relationships with, and so many things you've seen, you just can't possibly capture it all in one column. But, you know, one of my parting shots, so we'll take it back to the football side of things, is if you look at what happened with Muskegon and Mona Shores, yeah, I mean, the east side kind of took it to the west side a little bit, but on the bright side, at least I guess for Mona Shores, is that they're not going to have to face Cass Tech, and they're not going to have to face King either, even though they probably like another shot at them.
Sure.
You know, sending payback the other way this time, but they're Division II, you know, Shores being 2, you know, Cass Tech Division I, King 3, which means Muskegon's going to have to deal with King potentially down the road if they get that far, and Division III, I mean, that could be wide open, and honestly, Division II could be that way too. I mean, you're looking at one of the powers that's emerging, and it's no surprise they got to the finals last year, is De La Salle with Dan Roan, Orchard View grad, former Fremont and West Catholic coach. He's got them rolling already. They're coming off a nice win over River Rouge, and so if you're looking at Shores and potential long-term playoff road, that could be maybe way down the road, seeing them again.
Exactly. Well, that's going to do it for us. Thanks for stopping by. We'll be doing this every Wednesday, right around 6 o'clock hour, and we're looking forward to it. And support your local teams, and we will see you again next week. For Scott DeCamp and Mike Meekhof, I'm Jon Russel. Have yourself a great evening, everyone.